What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Marriage and Medicine. Today's video, we would like to talk a little bit about what you should and should not do when it comes to purchasing a house.
Especially if you're a first-time home buyer.
Especially, yeah, for sure. So we'll kind of go through the do list initially. So number one, do save money. That's number one.
It sounds like the simplest thing, right? But you'd be surprised that some people just don't do that.
They just don't save money.
Or they don't save enough.
Yeah, that too. As a physician, we were able to use a physician loan when it came to purchasing our house. But before we can even do that, since we were building new, we had to put a deposit down initially. And so you want to make sure that you have the money saved up to at least put down that initial deposit if it came to that situation. And if not, if you're going with a traditional loan, or if you're not a physician and you can't apply for the physician loan, try to save 20% if you can. Main reason is you want to try and avoid that private mortgage insurance if you can. And that's the pros of using a physician loan. You don't have to put any money down, and you also don't have to deal with that private mortgage insurance. But make sure that you save money before you even think about buying a house.
And you don't have to save 20% down. I mean, of course, the more you save, the better. But you want to save about 6 to 7% of whatever your sales price is going to be. You want to have that much saved up at least. Probably in this market, you want to have more than that as a buffer just in case. But that should be the minimum. You don't want to have less than that because you're going to be paying for possibly a down payment. You're going to be paying for an inspection, appraisals,
closing costs,
all the different types of fees. That would cover all of that. So definitely want to make sure you have that money saved up.
Yeah. And if you don't have the ability to save up that money, then maybe it's time to kind of think about if it's the right time to buy a house in that situation. And so definitely just make sure you look at your budget and see what you can save when that time comes.
The second thing you're going to want to make sure you do is hire a realtor. Now, I know some people might have mixed feelings on this, but if you are a buyer, there are actually no fees that you have to pay the realtor. The seller is the one that typically has to pay those fees. So for a buyer, I mean, there's kind of no reason why you shouldn't hire a realtor. Maybe if you're a seller, I could possibly see why you wouldn't want to do that. But to me, either way, I'd rather have someone who has more experience than me and knows what they're doing to help me out. So definitely hire a realtor. They're the ones that are going to basically come to bat for you and make your demands known and hopefully help execute those as well for you. They're supposed to represent you, whether you are the buyer or the seller. They're the one that's going to be fighting for you throughout the entire process. So it doesn't hurt to have that extra person in your corner while you're trying to go throughout this process.
Yeah. And when you're, sorry.
I was going to just say, especially if you are a first-time home buyer, because there's a lot that comes with buying a house that you don't know right away, even with doing research. And so it's just good to have that person there that you can ask questions to and that they can just help make things more clear for you.
Right. And on top of that, they have access to listings that you will not see on Zillow or Redfin, whatever it is you're using. They can get pocket listings. They can get all kind of listings that you have no idea is even on the market. And so definitely use that resource because, again, it's free to you. So why not use it? And on top of that, when you're looking for a realtor, I would suggest trying to find somebody who has a little bit more experience. I know it sounds bad, mainly because, you got the entry-level worker who just started as a realtor. They're excited. They're like, oh, you want to work with me? It's like, not really. Sorry, you haven't really sold enough for me. You definitely want to look for somebody who has a little bit more experience, if possible, in order to sell, to purchase or find a house for you.
Something else you definitely need to know before you start shopping around, know what's on your must-have list for your house. Meaning, know ideally how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms. Do you want a more updated modern house? Do you want a house with character? Do you want in a suburban neighborhood or more out in the country? Just know what you want. Do you need a fenced-in backyard? Do you want a pool? That's going to help you, and it's also going to help your realtor with finding houses for you if you already know what you're wanting, because that's the first thing that they do ask you to help with pulling houses for you. And so if you're kind of just like, I'm open to anything. It's going to make the search a little bit trickier for you, and then it can also maybe make it hard to narrow down to really decide what you want. So if you know that up front before you even talk to the realtor, before you even start looking at houses, that's going to help you out a lot. Thankfully, we're pretty much on the same page. Yeah. Like, we have the same taste in design and same taste in decor and all of that. So thankfully we didn't have that issue of like one of us wanting one thing and one wanting the other. But if you do have to go through that, the only way to really get through it is to compromise.
Yeah, just watch House Hunters. Basically, every House Hunter, everybody is completely opposite. I don't know how they find these people, but yeah, it's a thing. And so try to just find middle ground to where you both can be happy. And understand that houses aren't going to be perfect. You just kind of have to get as close to perfection as you can, and then make changes as you need to make it perfect for you. So the next thing on the must-do list is to shop around when it comes to finding a mortgage. You'll understand once you kind of start reaching out to different people that rates are variable in the sense of everybody, you'll go to one place and they may be quoting you 4.5%, another place will just end up quoting you 4, 3.5, 4%. It's like, why are they so different? And just make sure that you understand that there's a lot of kind of things that can be behind the scenes as well. Make sure that you look at the fee worksheet to try to see a breakdown of basically what kind of fees and all those kind of things are associated with that lower rate. Sometimes it could be a little bit too good to be true, but definitely shop around. And if you get a rate from one place and then another place is quoting you something maybe a little bit higher, but you really want to go with that other person for whatever reason, show them the rate that you're getting from the other competitor. They will a lot of times play ball and try to match that rate or maybe beat it in certain situations. So pinning different mortgage lenders against each other, it helps out in some situations. So definitely give that a try.
And just because one place might have a lower rate than the other doesn't necessarily mean that they're the better choice for you. Like TJ was saying, like, you need to look at all of the fees, because sure, their rate might be better, but then once you look at the details, you might see something that's a lot worse and can affect your overall mortgage in a more negative way than the other. So you might end up picking the one that has the higher rate, even though you might not have wanted to initially. So you just have to really try to look at all of that stuff. And I'm sure your realtor, if you're not really sure what to look for, would be willing to look through it with you as well and maybe kind of give you some things to think about when you're trying to make that decision. Something else you can do is shop around for realtors. So like when you meet with them, you usually have a consultation where you just kind of meet them and talk about things that you're wanting in a house and all of that. They get information from you, but you don't technically have to go with that realtor right then and there. You can talk to different ones and figure out which one you feel like would be the best fit for you. So don't feel like pressure that once you meet one realtor, that's the person you have to go with. You can pick, as long as you haven't signed any paperwork or anything, you can pick whoever you want, and you can talk to as many people as you want. But you do need to pick somebody, not just talk to all of these people and then like kind of have all of them doing work for you.
Let somebody know. You
need to sign with somebody.
Communicate.
So that person can be the one that's working for you versus having all of these people working for you. Right. Another thing you want to make sure is in good standing is your credit. So when you go to shop for houses, that's something that your lenders are going to pull is your credit report. So you want to know kind of ideally, or I guess an
estimate.
Yeah, an idea of what your credit score currently looks like before they pull it, because you don't want to be surprised. And if it isn't that great, I mean, you can have time to work on it. There are people out there that can help you with making your score better. But ultimately, I mean, things that can help, I guess, would be paying some things down as best as possible. But just overall, you want to have a decent score. It doesn't have to be like the highest of the high, but like a 400 ain't gonna cut it. So, especially with a physician loan, typically you want to be somewhere around, I believe, like 680 to 720-ish, somewhere around there. So keep that in mind if you do plan to use one of those. Once you get about like I believe it's like 710, 720 or higher. That doesn't really change your rates or anything at that point anymore. But you do want to be somewhere in that range. It's going to vary depending on which lender you use. Some might use less scores, some might use higher. So somewhere in that range should help overall, but that's something you definitely need to make sure is taken care of before you start your house search.
Yeah, one thing that people may not understand also, the whole credit system is weird. Don't pay something off before you're going to get your credit pulled. So if you have a car loan or something big like that, don't pay it off, because what's going to happen
if you financed anything,
if you financed it, don't pay it off. Credit card you can pay off, that's fine, but like
a car,
another house, or anything weird like that.
A house. If you finance like furniture, whatever, appliances for your house,
because what's going to happen? It's weird, but once you pay that off, it's going to drop off of your credit, and it's going to actually lower your credit. Briefly, it's going to bring it back up, but you don't want it to dip in that time where you need your credit score to be high, because it could be the difference between getting a loan and not getting a loan. So I would recommend just holding off on paying things completely off. Still make your payments, of course, and if it just happens to be paid off, it is what it is. But don't make extra payments to get it wiped off at that time.
And you think like, oh, I'm doing good, I'm paying this off, but they're like, oh, you just got rid of that line of credit? Okay, good, you were gonna help punish you. It's in a sense.
It makes no sense, but whatever.
And it's the same with like, if you're in the process of buying a house, like say if you're gonna close, like we're closing in a month. If we were to pay off my car right now or pay off his car, it would not be good, because they're going to be like, hold up, they just closed off something. Like, even though technically, yes, that's a good thing to get rid of it, it's going to affect our credit in a negative way. So just don't do it right before you're about to start pulling, and then ideally don't do it while you're in the process of buying a house. Like, wait till you've closed and all of that first, and then circle back around to that later after all that is done.
Right. Last on our list of to-do is get a home inspector. For us, it was important because, again, we are building a home. And so you ideally want to get a home inspector for 3 important parts. And that is ideally the foundation. We didn't get one at that point, but they recommend getting one. Pre-drywall, so that they can make sure that everything is in the appropriate location before they put the drywall up, which is very important, as well as a final inspection. Those are kind of the 3 they mostly recommend, but I would highly suggest getting a home inspector, especially with the new build. But even with homes that have been there for a little bit, I would still get a home inspector. A lot of times they do it at the end. Of course, when you're closer to closing, they'll just inspect it beforehand to see if there's anything that needs to be changed. Do not waive your home inspection. Do not waive your appraisal. I'm sorry.
I know this is dues.
This is the dues, but that just kind of went in with it.
But, people are doing some crazy stuff right now just to get a house, and it's like, okay, but then like you don't know if there's any issues.
Yeah, exactly.
So
not ideal.
Me personally, I would just pay the money to make sure there ain't nothing wrong, because I'm pretty sure also if there is something wrong, depending on what it is, depending on how bad it is, you can also possibly get out of buying the house without it affecting you too negatively.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so definitely get a home inspector. Now, going on to our list of don'ts. Number 1 would be do not finance anything big. Do not finance anything at all, really, but especially nothing big. Do not buy a new car. Do not try to get another house, a separate house or something weird. Don't buy a boat. Don't do any of those kind of
Don't
crazy
finance
things.
Furniture for your house, appliances for your house, none of that.
Don't do it.
Because they see that, and as soon as they see that on your credit, again, it's going to affect your credit, and the last thing you want while you're in the process of buying a house is that ding to go on there, and it's like, oh, snap. Now you're not going to be able to get this house because
that loan to value ratio is the main thing. So again, when it's kind of counterintuitive. You can't pay nothing off. You can't buy nothing. It's like, what do you guys want? The main issue with that is you're loaning, getting more money loaned to you, which is not a good thing. It is like, yes, you're adding another account, which is what they see as good. But the fact that you're adding more money that you currently owe right now is a bad thing. And so do not finance any big purchases.
The next thing you don't want to do is go shopping for houses before you even gotten a pre-approval or pre-qualification or anything, because what's going to happen more than likely is you're going to find houses that you like or one that you really want to like put in an offer for. And then if you go back and realize that you technically can't get approved for a loan of that size, it's just going to suck. So you want to make sure that you get your loan approval first. That way you know what money you're working with, and then go look at houses from there. Don't flip-flop it, because you might feel a little disappointed afterwards.
And especially in this market, if you have to wait to get your pre-approval, just forget about it. The house is gone already, so you want to come ready to go, pre-approval, everything locked in, so that you can expedite the process as much as possible in order to put you in the best position to get that house.
The third thing you want to make sure you don't do is put both people on the loan. I know like that might be a common thing that people think, especially if you're married, like, oh, I want us to both be on there. But what happens is when you want to do that, what the lenders will do is they will actually pull both of your credit scores. And so they pull 3 scores for whoever wants to be on the loan. So if it's both of you, they pull 3 for me, 3 for him. And they look at the middle score for both of you, and they pick the lowest one. So you don't want, if you're both trying to go in and say one of you has better credit than the other, they're going to pick the one that's not that great. And so you want to set yourself up for success and like have good credit to go with. So instead of doing that, just put both of your names on the deed of the house, rather than trying to get both of you on the loan and having to go through that whole issue, and then you can't get approved for as much as you could have if you just went with one person. Just get both names on the deed of the house, rather than worrying about doing it with the loan.
Right, but just make sure that one person that you decide to use is able to qualify for that loan. They have to still have an appropriate income and all that kind of stuff to be able to basically qualify for the loan. And the last thing that you absolutely do not want to do is buy too much house. There's nothing worse than being house poor. And by house poor, that means all of your extra money is going into the payment for your house. You can't go take trips. You can't go to a restaurant because you're too busy paying off the mortgage for your house because you bought too much. Make sure that you are doing your budgeting in order to understand what you can and cannot afford. And you're going to, likely your realtor is probably going to show you some houses that are a little bit above that budget that you want to spend. But stick firm to things that you feel like you can afford and can afford, because only you're the one that's going to have to be paying it. Not your realtor, not your cousin, not your mom. It's going to be you. So make sure that you are comfortable wherever that is when it comes to finding the house that you love.
So these are all things that we feel like were helpful for us, especially during the process of buying our house, that we feel like may be helpful for you as well. So if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to our channel, and you can also follow us on Instagram at Marriage and Medicine, and we will see you in the next video.